You walk into a room and within seconds you already know something's off. Nobody said anything. Nothing looks different. But you can feel it. A tension in someone's voice, a slight change in someone's energy, a detail everyone else in the room completely missed. Maybe you've been told you're too sensitive. Maybe you've spent years trying to turn this trait down, to stop noticing so much, to stop feeling so much. Here's what psychology actually says about this. You're not broken and you're not overreacting. You may be part of a well-documented research-backed group, people with unusually high sensory and emotional processing. And this trait, understood correctly, isn't a weakness at all. It's one of the most underappreciated forms of intelligence there is. In the 1990s, psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron introduced a concept called sensory processing sensitivity, often shortened to SPS. Her research, later expanded by multiple other psychologists and neuroscientists, identified a specific, measurable trait. Some people's nervous systems process sensory and emotional information more deeply than others. This isn't a vague personality label. It shows up in actual brain imaging studies. Research using fMRI scans has found that highly sensitive individuals show increased activity in brain regions associated with awareness, empathy, and processing subtle emotional cues compared to people who don't have this trait. In simple terms, the brain of a highly sensitive person is doing measurably more processing work in response to the same environment everyone else is standing in. Researchers commonly estimate that somewhere between 15 and 20% of people fall into this high sensitivity range. That's not a rare 1 in a million anomaly, but it is a clear minority, which explains something important. If you have this trait, you are very likely surrounded most of the time by people who genuinely do not process the world the same way you do. That mismatch is often the exact source of the "why am I the only one who notices this?" feeling. This trait typically shows up in a few consistent ways. Deep processing, thinking things through more thoroughly before acting, rather than reacting quickly. Emotional responsiveness, feeling both your own emotions and other people's emotions more intensely. Sensitivity to subtlety, picking up on small changes in tone, body language, or environment that others tune out entirely. And sensory sensitivity, becoming more affected by bright lights, loud noise, or overstimulating environments than the average person. Here's why this matters so much. For decades, this trait has been culturally mislabeled as a flaw. Let's look at exactly why that mislabeling happens, and then walk through the specific ways this trait, understood correctly, becomes a genuine advantage. Most environments, schools, workplaces, even social settings, are built around a specific unspoken default. Process quickly, react decisively, don't dwell too long on subtlety or emotional nuance. In that kind of environment, a highly sensitive person's natural processing style looks from the outside like hesitation, overreaction, or fragility. But that read is almost always a mismatch of environment, not a flaw in the trait itself. A nervous system built to notice more, process more deeply, and weigh emotional information carefully isn't malfunctioning in a fast, loud, high stimulation setting. It's simply operating in conditions it wasn't optimized for. The same depth of processing that looks like too much in a chaotic open plan office, looks like exceptional insight in a one-on-one negotiation, a therapy room, a creative studio, or any setting where subtlety actually matters. This is the core reframe. High sensitivity was never the problem. Mismatched environments and mislabeling were. Because highly sensitive people process more of the available information in any given moment, tone, timing, micro expressions, shifts in energy. They consistently pick up on patterns that lower sensitivity processors filter out entirely. This shows up constantly in real-world settings, sensing a colleague's stress before it's mentioned, noticing a change in a friend's mood before they've said a word, recognizing when a situation is about to shift before anyone else in the room reacts. This isn't intuition in some mystical sense. It's the direct output of a nervous system running more sensory input through conscious processing. That extra layer of notice detail is, functionally, an early warning and insight system that lower sensitivity people simply don't have access to in the same way. Because deep processing is a core feature of this trait, highly sensitive people tend to think through consequences, implications, and nuance more thoroughly before acting, which, while sometimes slower in the moment, tends to produce more considered, higher quality decisions over time. This is frequently misread as indecisiveness. In reality, it's closer to running more complete due diligence before committing. In fields where the cost of a rushed, shallow decision is high, leadership, strategy, creative work, relationships, this deeper processing style is a measurable asset, not a liability. The trait that gets you labeled overthinker in casual conversation is often the same trait producing your best, most carefully reasoned decisions. The same heightened processing that picks up on environmental subtlety also picks up on emotional subtlety in other people, which is precisely why highly sensitive people are so often the ones friends turn to for real understanding, not surface-level comfort. This isn't just being nice. It's a measurable capacity to accurately read what someone else is actually feeling, often before they've articulated it themselves. In relationships, leadership, teaching, healthcare, and any field built on genuinely understanding other people, this capacity isn't a soft skill on the side. It's frequently the core skill the entire role depends on. Let's bring this together. If you've spent years being told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too easily overwhelmed, the research suggests something different is actually going on. Your nervous system may simply be processing more of the available information than most people around you in real, measurable ways that show up in brain activity, not just in how you describe yourself. This trait was never designed to be a liability. It becomes one only when it's placed in environments built for fast, shallow processing instead of depth. In the right context, and often with a shift in how you understand and use it, the same sensitivity that's been labeled a weakness becomes a genuine advantage. Sharper pattern recognition, more considered decision-making, and a real capacity for emotional attunement that most people simply don't have access to. You were never too much. You were likely just surrounded by people processing the same world with considerably less depth than you were. So here's the question. Does this describe how you experience the world, noticing details, moods, and shifts that people around you seem to miss entirely? Tell me in the comments. This is Turn Wiser, and I'll see you in the next one. If you've been told you're too sensitive, psychology suggests something different is happening. Sensory processing. Sensitivity, a real trait identified by Dr. Elaine Aron, means your nervous system processes sensory and emotional information more deeply than most people's. A pattern confirmed in brain imaging studies present in roughly 15 to 20% of the population. This isn't weakness. It's a mismatch between a deep processing mind and fast, shallow environments. In the right context, this same trait produces sharper pattern recognition, more considered decisions, and genuine emotional attunement. You were never too much. You were just processing more than most.